I'm Professor Ivan Turok. I work at the Human Sciences Research Council in the Economic Development Division. The Statistics South Africa report on poverty trends in South Africa is a very important document. It basically provides an overview and an analysis of trends in poverty and inequality in the country over the last 15 years. And it highlights some very important messages. The first and most important is that about half of people living in South Africa experience poverty. That means they struggle to find the income, the money to buy the basic necessities of life. Food, shelter, transport, electricity. They struggle clothing. So this is very, very important. In addition to that, the report also shows that 1 in 4 households struggle with food poverty. They struggle to get enough food to be nutritious, to be healthy, to be productive. They go to bed hungry in many cases because they can't afford sufficient food. So the report, as well as sort of summarizing the current situation, also looks at how trends in these big important indicators, how these have changed over the last 15 years. And the report's really quite important because it shows that in the last 5 years, after a period of improvement, conditions seem to have deteriorated. In other words, now there are 3 million more people experiencing food poverty than 5 years ago. The proportion has increased from 1 in 5 of all households in South Africa to 1 in 4. So this is an important wake-up call that we need to rethink our strategy for dealing with poverty and inequality. Well, the government has made some very, very important policies that really have made a big difference to the living conditions of people. Social grants have made a huge impact on communities. The social wage, sanitation, water, free housing, electricity, free education and free healthcare have really helped to change the living conditions of many, many people. And that's a very, very positive story. I think what the report, however, shows is that we have stalled. The progress has stalled in terms of poverty, and that really we need to do more than simply continue with these social programs. The social wage consumes about 60% of all government spending, and it's clearly not doing enough to eradicate poverty, to eliminate unemployment, and to reduce inequality. So government needs to step up a gear and rethink its whole approach to poverty and inequality, I think. Poverty means basically people going without the basic necessities. People who don't have enough food on the table, people who don't have facilities to wash, to go to the toilet in a dignified way, people who don't have proper shelter, so they've experienced the cold in winter and they get wet when it rains. People who have to sleep on the street in the extreme situation because they don't have anywhere to stay. People who can't have proper clothing to keep them warm and dry. People who live in unsatisfactory environments where there is a lot of risk of fire, where there is flooding and where there is disease, where there are high levels of crime, people living in very poor neighborhoods, where they're vulnerable, feel insecure because of crime and violence. These are kinds of symptoms of poverty that really are a big worry for a country like South Africa. The government needs to build on its good track record of the social wage by doing more around the economy. The simple and most important thing that can be done to reduce poverty is to create more employment so that people have a decent income to keep them in a decent living condition. And so we need to take the issue of jobs and the economy more seriously, and we need to come together with different sectors of society, with the business community. We need to find ways of increasing investment in job creation, in business growth. We need to encourage more people to start their own businesses and to help those small businesses to grow and develop and prosper so that they create jobs and they create decent jobs. This is really the most important thing. In addition to a stronger economic push, government needs to do more about education and training to improve people's skills. Many of our people don't have skills to enable them to compete in the labor market. So people need to be helped to improve their capabilities and their skills so they can get decent jobs and earn a decent living. And I think a third thing that government must do is to improve the living environments in which many people live. The neighborhoods, the townships, the informal settlements. Many of these places don't have decent services. So government needs to strengthen its efforts, particularly in informal settlements, to provide people with water and sanitation and electricity and access roads and improve shelter so that people can live decent lives where they feel secure and where they're comfortable and where they can be productive and go out to work. That's an important issue about the relationship between population growth and poverty. And in many countries, there has been what's called a demographic dividend, that countries that have growing populations actually manage to get stronger economic growth as well, because more people means more consumers, means more workers, it means more source of demand for the economy. And so I think the trick is, how do we capture this demographic dividend in South Africa? I think part of the answer is that we need to ensure people have skills so that they are productive, can get jobs, can start enterprises. That's very important. Another part of it is to ensure that people live in places that are also productive. So one of the interesting features of South Africa is the movement from rural areas to the cities. People are voting with their feet to move to where they perceive the jobs to be better, the job prospects to be better. And so we must enable this process. We must help people to move into places where they will be in decent living environments. And we must help to concentrate resources and investment in infrastructure in our cities, which are good places for economic growth. That's the track record. Another message of this report is that our cities have been prospering while other parts of the country have been lagging behind. That's a normal economic process, and we should embrace that process of economic concentration, of population concentration. You get a kind of dynamism in cities that can spur more investment, attract and create more jobs, improve the skills base of the city, and really create quite a buzz, which is where development comes from. The buzz of people living in dense concentrations, learning from each other and being productive. So one of the other problems in the last 5 years has been the increase in prices that people have to pay for food, for electricity, for transport, for housing. And this has added to the problems and is one of the reasons for the increase in poverty that I talked about before. That basically people with a static income but facing higher costs of transport and of food will suffer accordingly. And so this is a big challenge for government. How do we prevent these increases in prices? How do we stop the supermarkets increasing their prices more quickly than people's incomes are going up? And this has been a big challenge in the last few years. So this is not just an agenda for government. This is a whole of society agenda. Poverty impacts on all of us. So we all have to do our bit. The business sector, it must invest. Business is sitting on millions and trillions of rands at the moment. It needs to invest to grow the business, to create the jobs. Civil society also needs to come to the table. We want communities to pull together, communities to help with upgrading housing, upgrading settlements. We want people to work together, to express their needs, and then to work constructively, to build sustainable and livable environments in which they're happy, to tackle crime together. This is very important for people to pull together to deal with the challenges that we face. The NDP is a very important strategy for the country. I think we do need to do more to get behind it. It talks about the need for economic development and employment, the need to strengthen the capabilities of government, so the government is coordinated and government can intervene effectively, that government departments, the municipalities spend their budgets. This is very, very important messages of the NDP to help us to tackle the scourge of poverty and inequality in South Africa.